Did you know a single salt mine once funded one-third of an entire kingdom? Today, we're hitting deep underground in Poland.
We're exploring the Wieliczka and Bochnia royal salt mines, one of the very first World Heritage Sites ever.
Get ready for giant hidden chambers, centuries of history, and essential travel tips. Let's head into the deep right after the intro. Welcome to World Heritage Rookies, the podcast where we explore UNESCO World Heritage Sites one episode at a time. We are Lina
And Ralph, and we will travel alongside you to some of the most stunning sites our world has to offer.
Each week, we dive into the history, fun facts, and reasons why World Heritage Sites matter for humanity, sharing our own discoveries and travel tips along the way.
So, let's dive in and learn about some World Heritage together. Welcome everybody to episode 6 of World Heritage Rookies. If it's the first time you're joining us, welcome. We're very happy that you found your way to this podcast about World Heritage sites.
And if it's your second, third, fourth, or sixth episode,
we would be so happy if it would be the 6th episode, yeah.
Welcome back. We are really happy to have you. That means that you are finding our conversations interesting, and that makes us really happy.
It does, yes. And today, it's going to be your turn again, Lina, to tell us about another amazing World Heritage site. You want to tell us what we're going to learn about today?
Well, probably you already saw it in the name of the episode. Today, we are going to be talking about Wieliczka and Bochnia royal salt mines. Before continuing, I want to say thank you to one of my best friends, my Polish friend, which teach me how to pronounce this name. So I really hope that I am doing it properly and I am not butchering the names in her honor.
I would say that you nailed it, but on the other hand, I'm not qualified to say if you nailed anything in Polish. So unfortunately, my approval means nothing here.
She was really sweet. She sent me an audio like Wieliczka and Bochnia. And I was like, for a lot of time practicing like Wieliczka. So I really hope that I'm pronouncing it well. So just let me know. Maybe in our Instagram account, you can criticize my Polish at World Heritage Rookies. So before starting, as always, Ral, do you know anything about the Wieliczka and Bochnia royal salt mines?
Well, not many things, I have to admit. So I know they are in Poland. I believe they are west of Krakow, if I remember, right? So they are close to Krakow, to my knowledge.
West-south, yeah.
And I know that they are supposed to be like really, really big. And so it's a pretty large complex. And I know that I'm quite jealous of you because you have already been there and I have not.
Yes, actually, when I came to Europe, that was my first trip out of Germany. So I went to Prague, then I went through a tour to Poland and went back through the north of Germany. So I was quite happy because it was like 2 weeks in the road. It was really interesting. And I have to admit, one of my favorite countries in Europe will always be Poland.
Yeah, I have not visited Poland as much as I wished to, but anytime we've been there, we have been lucky enough to be invited to 2 weddings in Poland, which were by themselves just very cool experiences, but also we combined them some with other trips. It was always a really pleasant time, yeah.
I do have to admit, yeah, the Polish people really knows how to have weddings. Really nice, really entertaining, amazing food, amazing drinks. Anyhow, so regarding the history, the salt production in the salt mines date back over 5,000 years. So we're talking about the Neolithic period. Early people didn't mine salt underground. Instead, they collected salt by boiling and roasting salt water, which is basically, it's called brine, and it's just basically taking really concentrated salt salt water and just boiling it. This was really common in natural springs and wells all around the world, so it's not uncommon to see that they did it so early.
How do they know that these early peoples did this? Are there any kind of remains that show this, or is this more assumptions on what you just mentioned from observations in other areas with natural occurring salt reserves?
They found, some studies reveal that some of the salt places, because it's not like water running, it is more like ponds of water. So many of these ponds were already drying up since a lot of years ago. Nevertheless, in the 10th and 11th century, there is when actually physical evidence started to appear. They found boiling kettles, showing how in this period the salt was extracted. By the 11th century, Wieliczka, which in this moment was called Magnum Sal in Latin, was already an important brine production center, and it was when actually they started to doing it a lot more massive, the extraction of salt. Nevertheless, the real game changer came when those surface springs started to dry up. So the concentration of these ponds started completely to disappear.
So that means the majority of salt that was taken until then was really just in quotation marks the surface.
Salt. Yes, pretty much. And I mean, we are talking about the Middle Ages already. So we did a big jump, and I guess that it's common information that salt was as pricey as gold sometimes.
What fascinates even more is when you tell me, like you said, it's a huge jump. It's thousands of years, and until that time, just the surface salt was sufficient to fill the needs of the people. Until then, that is amazing.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is a huge area, and there is always, I mean, you know that like these ponds after rain, it started to fill up again, and it was a constant process, but the mine started to be, or like the extraction started to be so strong that eventually they dry up.
Understood. And I assume obviously with increasing population and also when people more understood the usage of salt, then obviously the demand changed and
increased it. Yeah.
And the demand before was not comparable to what you would have afterwards.
Nevertheless, the miners followed the Borlach rule. This rule was formulated by the advisor on mining issues of the Elector of Saxony, here in Germany, engineer Johannes Borlach, and the rule said, and I will read it to you: where brine springs lay, one can expect salt layers, which are the cause of the saltiness of the springs. Water flew through these layers and absorbed the salt before springing out to the air surface, which basically means if there is salt in the surface, it had to also be found underground.
Because it has to come from somewhere when there is no seaside nearby, which there is no seaside close to the area we're talking about.
Yes, of course, we are talking about a place close to Krakow. So, we are in the middle of continental Europe. After they follow this rule, of course, they started to explore. And there is when they actually officially discovered the salt mines. Bochnia was discovered in 1248 and Wieliczka in the late 13th century. And basically, this was the birth of raw salt mining in Poland. So, for centuries after their discovery, these mines, collectively known as the Krakow salt works, were the economic bone of the Polish kingdom. From the 14th to the 16th century, this salt provided about 1/3 of the royal treasure's income. So it was pretty much the bank of the Polish crown.
Who needs gold mines if you have salt mines, apparently? Exactly.
These well-founded significant projects in Poland, including the Babel Castle, which is the most significant castle in Krakow. This is the Polish castle. The Krakow Academy, which today is an university. The city walls of Krakow and fortifications also around of the city, and even the National Army. There is a funny saying by King Casimir the Great, who reportedly said that he found Poland made of wood and let it made of stone. This was basically how everybody perceived the salt mines. He was actually known as King Casimir the Great, just like a little parenthesis here, because he also, with the money of the salt mines, built a hospital for miners and give miners special rights and privilege, of course, coming from the fact that they were pretty much giving the treasure to the Polish king.
I mean, yeah, respect for recognizing who was responsible for giving you money in the end. That has not always been in history that rulers have recognized the foundation of their wealth and their income well enough. So he seems to have been really smart about recognizing who he has to thank for that.
I think that that's exactly why he is known as King Casimir the Great. I mean, it's in the name, right? And I think that sometimes we don't know, I mean, some of the kings are really honored to their honorifics. So good to know that he was really one of those. Bochnia, now jumping again, because of course they were in the salt mines were in production for many centuries, but Bochnia stopped commercial salt production in 1990 and Wieliczka in 1993. Both of them now work as primarily touristic attractions and a sanatorium or a health resort. There is still production of boiled salt in certain parts just to prevent collapses of the mines.
I did not know they were active for so long. I mean, it's been now just around 30 years that they are inactive. So that is a really long period of active salt production around there.
Yes, and I think that reflects one of the most wonderful things of visiting this place is that you can really see a lot of how they were extracting salt in the 20th century, because it's still there. I mean, it only has been 30 years since it's officially closed, or since they are officially closed.
Do you know why they stopped the salt production around there? Was it just really a dedicated decision to make on tourism, or was it, I assume they did not run dry or empty?
Well, a part of the fact that they were producing less salt with time, that it was also a topic that I was going to mention a little bit afterwards, which was, okay, a lot of the wooden beams that sustain the whole complex were starting to be rotten. Also, salt started to be cheaper and cheaper with the time. So, of course, the production of salt didn't become economically viable anymore. So there is a lot of reasons, and it just eventually, it was expensive to maintain the salt mines that actually continue the production.
And then probably now it's a lot more valuable in quotation marks as a tourist attraction compared to as a pure salt production.
Exactly. And it became a symbol of the Polish government. So, of course, their protection, it's more vital than actually the salt that they could probably extract. So, this is pretty much the history. Is not that like it's a lot of history, but it's like the specific facts are, well, not so long. What is interesting is all the facts and stories that come from the mines. Beyond the impressive history, these mines are actually part of the royal legend of the King of Poland. So there is a lot of stories around it, and one of them is the legend of Prince Kinga. The Princess Kinga of Hungary was destined to marry the Prince of Krakow. Instead of gold, she asked for a lump of salt as her dowry. Salt, of course, coming back to what we already mentioned, was more valuable than gold at the time. She threw her engagement ring into the Hungarian salt mine, and upon arriving in Poland, she told miners to dig near present-day Wieliczka. They discovered a rich salt deposit and Kinga's ring inside of one of these rocks. Kinga then became the patron saint of Polish salt miners. She was highly Catholic, and today the stunning St. Kinga's Chapel, which is inside Wieliczka, is of course dedicated to her.
There is a chapel inside a mine?
Yeah. No, there is a lot of things inside the mine. It's a huge complex, Ralph. And actually, I will say, when I enter, I mean, I will not spoil it to anybody, but when I enter the chapel, I mean, you will immediately see the lights because I will also mention it a little later, but it has a huge chandelier inside. And it's huge. I mean, it's like a completely form cathedral inside the salt mine.
Okay, I would have never expected that you find a church within a salt mine. I mean, like perhaps like a small complex or so, but okay.
And you can actually explore. I mean, the whole route, and I will mention also that a little bit later, is quite long. If I don't remember wrong, I was almost all day in the salt mines.
Oh wow.
Then, of course, I wanted to mention some information about the life of the miners. So they were, of course, no ordinary laborers. Working in Wieliczka Salt Mines and in Bochnia was actually considered a privilege, coming from all these specific living conditions that the kings of Poland offered to the miners. Of course, not only was a privilege, but also an honor to them. And actually, the workers of the salt miners were pretty much the best ones across the world. They had really good conditions, including they have a maximum 8-hour workday. So
at that time, that must have been luxury, right?
Exactly. They, of course, have a lot of rest periods, and also, I don't know if you know this, Ral, but mining salt is way safer and healthier than, for instance, coal mining or a special diamond mining or other kind of material mining.
I would assume because less dust might be created compared to the other ways, because I assume, I don't know anything about mining, I will freely admit this, but I assume when you're mining for coal or for other minerals, then with all the rock that needs to be destroyed, like there will be more dust and anything else and coming into the lungs. And I assume if you're mining for salt by itself, that will probably create less of this dangerous dust, I would assume.
Yeah, of course. That's the reason why there is a sanatorium inside, because actually there is actually research, and I will mention that a little bit afterwards, where it says that, okay, yes, breathing the soil being a soil environment is actually really good for people with asthma or with other breathing conditions. Well, also something interesting about the miners, coming back to the topic, they actually did a lot of sculptures inside the mine, and of course, they had no formal art training or anything like that, but many of them, they last until today. And it is really interesting to see how much of an honor was for them that they actually preserved the site quite a lot. Other really interesting fact is that there were a lot of horses underground. So now imagine horses working hundreds of meters underground. Sounds quite crazy, but this was quite normal at some point of history. The maximum number of horses were 80, and they live and work hundreds of meters below ground. There was, of course, an underground stable chamber. And yes, today visitors can actually visit this the stable and also see the horsepower treadmills that we're using for mining work.
I think the first question that comes to mind, how do you bring a horse that deep down below Earth? Because I assume they will not like the journey down there.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, we know that they are certain level of trains, and this is my next interesting fact. So Bosnia, it's an unique attraction. Well, before they had a train for mining where they the same mechanism that bring the horses in also extracted the salt out, which is these carriers that are like a train, like with what they mine, but they kind of transformed it somehow. And today it features 100-meter underground slide, which is the Europe's only underground boat crossing. this kind of train has, of course, a sports court, a playground, what I mentioned before, a raiding train, and passes through the center of San Kinga's chapel. So, just to be clear, there is a train inside the complex that you can mount and go through the attractions.
And pass through all these sites that you mentioned, like a sports ground, like a chapel, like a stables, and this is like a sort of tour guide train in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there is also, I mean, of course, I do not remember, and I'm not really sure this is included in one research, but I think that, of course, that has an additional cost, but it could be really useful for people that had mobility issues, because you have to walk a lot down, up, and if you are not able to walk properly, this could be quite challenging. In Wieliczka, you cannot miss, oh my goodness, the Ram's Barracks chamber. I'm sorry, again, I am probably butchering the name. It contains an underground lake that is 32% saltier than the Dead Sea. Or also in Wieliczka, you shouldn't miss the Michalowicz chamber. Oh, Michalowicz? Oh, God.
We will try to spell it out somewhere.
For sure. A 36-meter tall hall with a giant wooden pillars that took around 1 century to build and is the largest chandelier in the mine. And the stainless Stanzig's chamber, which reached a height of 50 meters and was even used for a hot air balloon ride and bungee jumping at some point.
Underground hot air balloon rides.
Yes. I mean, it is massive chambers that today are using for touristic purposes. So they do a lot of activities in these rooms.
I still even though it's massive, I still think my head cannot wrap around the fact of like bungee jumping or hot air balloons underground. It just seems counterintuitive. But yeah, if you mentioned they're that large and it's possible, oh wow, yeah. But that's of course nothing that I think would originally come to mind when you think about a salt mine.
Exactly. And I think that it is really interesting because, I mean, one of the amazing facts is that actually people can stay inside, but I will mention that a little bit later. What is also really interesting is the amazing preservation of the site and the air quality. So the air underground, it's clean and sterile. So it's pretty much free from allergens, bacteria, and pollutants. And why? Because of course, the salt concentration. It is today 10 times higher than the salt concentration in the Polish seashore. And visitors sometimes can see crystal caves filled with pure halite crystals up to 50 centimeters wide. So they are still forming reservoirs. These salt mines had also really interesting and famous visitors. One of them was Nicolaus Copernicus, of course, we know he's Polish, and Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, a German, who explored the mines in 1790.
Goethe knew what some places to visit.
Yeah, all right.
His Italy visits are obviously quite famous. I did not know that he was also visiting the salt mines. Yeah. I
remember when he visited this huge tree in the first botanic garden in Italy. Remember when we visited?
Yeah, in Padova.
In Padova. That was amazing. And that guy had really explored. He enjoyed his life. Of course, beyond tourism, the large chambers today host also tours and exhibitions, sport tournaments, scientific conferences, and concerts sometimes. So quite an interesting place, right?
Yeah, considering that it's not active anymore, it still seems pretty active around there.
I mean, it had a lot of visits every year. So now that we are that we know a little bit about why the salt mines are interested, we go to why it's a World Heritage Site, though I think that is pretty obvious. So, but Ralph, how many criteria do you think that Wieliczka and Bochnia fulfills?
I have to admit, like the first discussion I have to make with myself, is it only a cultural World Heritage Site or is it a mixed World Heritage Site? I really do not know. I would at the moment go for it meets 3 criteria and 2 of them are cultural and 1 is natural. Just a guess.
No, unfortunately, no. This is the salt mines only have 1, which is criteria number 4, historic example.
Okay, so it's a cultural only then.
It is only cultural. The salt mines are a standout example of architecture and design from a specific period of time, which is pretty much from the 14th to the 16th century. Well, the Wieliczka Salt Mine was added first in 1978, and then it was annexed the Bochnia salt mines. Of course, they are recognized for its extraordinary historical and cultural value. And in 2013, it's when it was expanded, also listing Bochnia Royal Salt Mine.
I think there's a good sort of reference of what we talked about in our last episode about Nahanni National Reserve Park, that even though
you can extend,
even though something already is a World Heritage Site, when you have a good enough reason to ask for extension, this can lead to a World Heritage Site being expanded upon, which seems to be here the case, because I assume they are so closely connected with the dependence and the development.
Also, I mean, let's think about it. The World Heritage Site was subscribed in 1978 first, and in those time, the salt mines were still being
active,
mined.
Yeah, they were still active. Yeah.
This is also another really interesting topic, which means, for instance, for an economic driven place, it could also be open. And it is interesting because a salt mine can be destroyed by mining. So, and it was subscribed already. So by that time, it had to be quite impressive already.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, the majority of the reasoning or why it was inscribed is its historical background. So I assume that not the real mining process or the mine by itself was the main driver, but how it showed how important it was during the Middle Ages and when it was active. And I assume, obviously, when those would have been destroyed, we would have a whole other discussion about the infrastructure or about the significance of the World Heritage Site compared to, well, now the fact that it's not being actively a salt mine anymore.
Exactly. And I found it really interesting as well. I mean, I think that there is also needs to be understood that Wieliczka is way bigger than Bochnia. So maybe that one, I assume that by that time, but to be honest, I didn't research about it, or I didn't saw in it in my research, was if they probably closed part of the Wieliczka site just for touristic purposes, because it's one of the requirements of UNESCO is that visitors can actually come and see.
Accessible, yeah.
Exactly. So I will assume that was not like full mining already by 1978. Well, today, the Wieliczka and Bochnia mines are among Poland's oldest continuously operating companies. So it is actually a company today, which is the one that runs off all the attraction complex.
It just doesn't mine salt anymore, it mines tourists. And
they are one of the oldest continuous operating companies because they have been running since the Middle Ages, preserving not only, of course, the monetary reasons why the salt were open, but also the history, culture, and the craftsmanship. So yeah, that's why it's our heritage site.
I'm really surprised it only fits one criteria, I have to admit. I would have really assumed from what you've been describing that it might have also been natural criteria. To be fully honest, since we also know that the whole criteria and nomination process and way of working for UNESCO has evolved, I do not actually know if by 1978 there already was a possibility for mixed World Heritage Site, or if this came just later, something perhaps like we need to check out for ourselves afterwards. I'm quite curious, have to admit, about it. Since when can something be a mixed World Heritage Site? But yeah, I would have assumed from the importance of the salt mines around there could have been also a natural one.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think that what I found interesting is that when Bochnia was subscribed in 2013, the name of the sites changed to Poland's Royal Salt Mines. So before it was like the salt mine of Wieliczka, and then they put it like in a bundle. So I'm pretty sure that also when the criteria changes, maybe also changes what the requirements. I think that that's also another thing to consider. Maybe the governments do not require more criteria to be subscribed to the place because it has different requirements and it could be even harder to get them. This is something to research because I'm also quite interested. So now we go a little bit to how to visit and some travel tips that you should have in mind when you are thinking to go to the Royal Salt Mines of Poland. So the first one is that Wieliczka, it's a little bit closer to Krakow. It's around 30 kilometers or 8 miles from Krakow to the south. And Bochnia, it's around 25 miles or 40 kilometers to the east of Krakow. So they actually, something I probably had not mentioned so far, when I went there, I went with a tour from Krakow. So I just paid for a one-day trip. So they drive me to Wieliczka first because it's the bigger mine, and then to Bochnia, and then back to Krakow. So this is probably, well, I would highly recommend this kind of trip because obviously, most likely your hub, it's going to be Krakow.
Which by itself is also an amazing place to stay, right?
Yes.
I mean, one of the cities that is also very high on my must-visit list, but I think we have described in the past that our must-visit lists are already too long for everything to tackle, but you told me you had an amazing time in Krakow.
That's not even in question. It's more the fact that I was so highly surprised because I was not expecting having so much fun and seeing so much history and how pretty and baroque the city is. I was expecting, I had more idea about Warsaw and being a little bit colder city because of all the history that is behind, but Krakow completely surprised me. And I think that was why I was like, wow, okay, this is cool. This is nice. This is a really nice place. Something really interesting, of course, you don't really have to take a tour if you don't want to. It is also the possibility to reach by car, taxi, Uber. It's around 20-30 minutes for a drive to Wieliczka. And you can also get a bus. So there is one line, the 304 bus, which goes directly to Wieliczka, and it takes around also 30 minutes. You need to buy the Zone 1 and Zone 2 ticket, but it's, of course, the most cheapest option. You can also take a train. A train from Krakow, Glowny to Wieliczka takes about 20 minutes and departs twice an hour. And as I mentioned before, they are organized tours, which make it a lot of easier for you. So I remember they gave me lunch as well. So we went to one mine.
What was the most important experience you needed? I got lunch.
I got lunch in my tour. No, actually it was a big bus. So of course it was a lot of people. But what I love it is that they basically were like, you are free to go for like 6 hours in Wieliczka, and if I'm not wrong, like 3 hours in Bochnia. But it was not, so they just literally was the logistics what they took over. So there is also this type of tours if you are not interested to actually walk with everybody. Also, to be honest, it's a little hard because some of the way or like the places to walk are really narrow. So big groups can be annoying. So just you to have it in mind. I mean, if you could do it alone, I would highly recommend it because, of course, there is information in each of the rooms that you're visiting, and also you have an audio guide in case you want to know a little bit more of the history.
Was it busy when you were there? Was it crowded?
Yes, it was. I mean, just also to for everybody's knowledge, it's one of the most visited sites on Poland. So imagine everybody that visits Krakow goes to the salt mines. So it is quite demanding, especially in summertime. So from May until the September, it is quite visited. So, but also if you go in out of this time, it's quite cold. So just have it in mind that it's probably that you should go early. That's what the most important part.
It was before COVID you visited, right?
It was way before COVID. I visited in 2018.
Yeah, okay. There was a time before COVID, yes.
Yes, it was a really nice time before COVID. Well, the mines has a really stable underground weather, always in and around 17 degrees or 63 Fahrenheit all year around. So when you are thinking to go in winter, please do not be concerned because inside the weather is always the same. Maybe just think about how it's going to be outside, and visiting outside places could be a little bit harder. Anytime, as I mentioned, is good time. But of course, summer, as I mentioned it before, is peak season. So also you need to book your tickets ahead. Of course, you can pay there, but there is going to be crowds, and especially because many Polish tourists do not get the tickets in advance, so you will see a lot of people in the line. So to avoid crowds, visit early. They pay your tickets online.
This is something that I think we have learned sometimes the hard way as a general recommendation. Check way in advance in some places, especially World Heritage Site, if you need pre-booking. So we had multiple times already the situation where you needed to look actually months in advance to be able to get bookings, and not just because, well, there are crowds, but actually because access is limited. So this is something I think very good, important in general to keep in mind when you're interested in visiting World Heritage Site. Research in time, because some places are really, really limited with regard to the access that you get.
Exactly. And well, it is also an advantage that sometimes you can only find benefits online. So for the case of Wieliczka and Bochnia, it is important to book online if you want a specific preferred language. For instance, they do not have, I think that they have Italian, Polish, of course, German, and English. So if you want one of these languages, most likely you will have to book in advance. A part of Polish. I think Polish is like a really current. Also, something really interesting, Bochnia tickets are actually cheaper online. So
I guess it's not that visited compared, because it's a bit harder to get to.
Exactly. So of course, if you want to visit both, in my case was a standard fee, but if you want to visit both by yourself, most likely it's better to book online. Also, I mean, thinking about how narrow, for instance, Wieliczka is, you cannot do self-guided tours only, so you need somebody to be with you the whole time. Regarding the tours that you can take, actually there are several, and in Wieliczka, because it's the most visited place, you can find 4, and they are divided by names, which I found really interesting. So the first one is the tourist route, which is the most popular. It's a comprehensive 3-hour plus walk, and includes as an option 1-hour museum tour covering 2 kilometers or more of famous highlights like chapels, lakes, and sculptures around the salt mine. These tours, as I mentioned, are pretty much during the whole day, and the most frequent languages are English and Polish. The second one is the miner's route, and it's a little bit of more an interactive kind of tour. It has some experiences where you dress as a miner and perform tasks. This has almost the same length that the tourist route, and also covers 2 kilometers for different parts of the mine. And it is really cute because at the end you earn an honorary miner certificate. This is, of course, the more kid-friendly option. There is always also the pilgrims route, which is, of course, faith-focused. This is still a really Catholic-driven site. This special tour go through the places of worship and faith, and is usually just for private groups on the request. And finally is the graduation tour, which is called the relaxing tour, and it's not a tour. It's actually a structure when you are put where that releases salt-infused mist for natural inhalation therapy, and it's highly recommended for allergies or asthma, and it's around a 30-minute visit, which is the maximum time you can be there, but also for health benefits.
I assume you've taken the -2 when you were there, right?
Yeah, I don't remember I got a certificate, but because I didn't know that was even an option. But anyway, Bochnia Tours has just the tourist route, and it also includes multimedia exhibition of the ways of working of the miners, also an underground boat crossing, and even a horse route passage. These the most common tours in the Bochnia tour are actually English, German, Spanish, and Polish. The accessibility, well, in Bochnia has prepared a route especially for people with disabilities, so it also can be visited by people that has some movement issues. So I also researched a little bit more about the health benefits of salt therapy just because I was curious. So for Wieliczka, they have a healing chamber called Heilstollen, which is a German word.
It is, yeah.
For respiratory diseases, and it's especially helpful for people with asthma and allergies. And Bochnia had actually a sanatorium where you can stay overnight. It is important here to do a caution. So in the research that has been developed so far, some experts say that dry air can actually worsen asthma, but actually the EAFA, the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America, says that it's actually likely safe, and it should, of course, be used but approached with caution. So just to be clear, it is important also for you, depending of each person, to also visit your doctor before actually trying to stay in the sanatorium in case you want to have some of the health therapies in the salt mines. Something also to mention, and it's because I saw a lot of comments where most of the criticism for the place is about how much you have to walk up and down. So please expect a lot of steps. Dress properly, because especially in the Wieliczka tour, you have to walk down a lot. Around 350 wooden steps are to be encountered, and it can be slippery and so on.
Nevertheless, there's a slide, right?
Yeah, but of course it's not for everybody.
Not every part, but there's still, you can go down a slide.
Also, I don't think that everybody wants to slide down. But if you are, that would be amazing.
That would save some steps.
Of course, there is in the sites facilities are valuable, including cafes, gift shops, restrooms, and something super interesting I found. Bochnia has actually an underground bar.
A bar?
Yes.
Like alcohol drinks bar?
Yes. Leaving the mine, it's a little bit easier actually, because when you go in walking, but going out, it's through an elevator. And the museum tour uses a different, faster elevator than the shortened tours. So just for you to know. Also, sometimes, especially in peak hours, taking out the elevator can take a lot of time. So please have also that in account.
And you mentioned you could also, like, instead of the walking, is like there are certain parts you can go with this sort of in underground train, right?
Yes.
Instead.
Of course, I guess that this has to be a specific requirements when you get the tickets. So please have in mind also as well when you are booking if you want to go in the slide or in the train, or maybe have no, I think that the bar is actually free, but in case it's not. And also, as I had mentioned several times, you can stay in both of the mines. They have sleeping facilities, and of course, it's an unforgettable experience from one I also researched. So maybe if it's a possibility for you, I don't think it will be bad to say, hey, I stay in a salt mine, hundreds of kilometers underground. Finally, of course, Wieliczka and Bochnia are a must-see wonder in Poland. and in my perspective, really shows the human creativity, perseverance, and power of soul in the Middle Ages. So I found it incredibly interesting. So I can just say it's a wonderland. So please visit. It is really nice. It is not an expensive experience, and it's really easy to reach from Krakow or other major cities. So if you can, please go and let us know what do you think afterwards.
Would you go another time?
For sure. I mean, I do have to because you haven't been there. So it's kind of a
I can go by myself.
No, but I actually don't remember seeing the bar in Bochnia. So I would love to finish, going to both mines, going to Wieliczka in the morning, then to Bochnia, and finish the tour in the bar. That would be nice. But probably we will need our own cars because I don't think that they will wait for us.
Well, if we sleep there and stay the night, then that might solve the problem anyway.
That would be really interesting as well. So let's
check it out, yeah.
Anyway, so that's everything for today's episode. Please, as we had mentioned it several times during the episode, check out the information we are going to be publishing at World Heritage Rookies. And yeah, what do you think, Ralph?
Well, first, thank you obviously for all the details that you provided. I have to admit, next to the historical background, what I really enjoyed was your first-hand experience of visiting. I think this is always good when you know from somebody who has actually been there and if they liked it and or what to keep in mind. So this was also really good to know how much you enjoyed it. And yeah, like I already mentioned, next time going to Poland, I think we really need to get some stops in and around Krakow. So
I mean, seriously, it's a beautiful city, and it's not only because of the historical parts. It's also it's really in summer especially. It's such a charming city. So yeah, I'll not say I just go in summer, but I will say it is also a really nice time maybe to consider to go around June. I think that when I went, was actually August. So also a possibility if you can and you have this alternative.
Great. Thank you so much for all of this. I hope that our listeners enjoyed the episode as much as I did. Next week, it's again my turn.
Where are we going, Ralph?
We are jumping again to another continent. We're not going back to the Americas. We're actually going this time to Africa.
Ooh, our first African site.
I think so, yeah. Right, yeah. Our first site in Africa. So I have to admit that was one of the episodes. I think it was the one that I was looking the second most forward to after Aachen Cathedral from the first selection that we did. So I guess you can be quite excited about hearing our next episode. And until then, thank you everyone for listening. Have a great time until the next episode and see you then.
Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.